All right. Yes, Melinda.
So, can you all hear me, or should I use the mic? I can hear you. Okay.
Or I could go around. Yeah.
Yeah, what?
Oh, I was gonna say I could go around with the mic if anybody.
No, I can repeat it for the camera.
So,
Okay.
oh, okay. I mean, unless you want me to use the mic. Do you want questioners to use the mic? Is that, Stan, is that better?
He'll repeat the
Okay,
question.
okay. So I'm just, you know, in the 70s, the early 70s, the Bags for Land movement and all that, there were a lot of people who, you know, were trying to create a new society in the belly of the beast. And there were other people who were, you know, fighting to end the war, mainly in Vietnam. That was my experience anyway. And they can both coexist, but I mean, to me, as I said in my remarks, the way I feel energized and hopeful is by building community and building alliances and working with people, getting arrested with people, like blocking the doors of a disgusting bank. So, I mean, I kind of always wanted to go back to the land, but it just hasn't seemed to be the thing for me to do. And I hope you're not making that dichotomy, that you can either, you know, be in the street with a banner, or you can go back to the land and try to build a new society.
No, I think we absolutely need to be doing both, and we need to be doing both really all the time. That's why I really focus on the evolution of climate justice movements around the world, some of which are land-based, some of which are urban. I think there are many ways that those currents come together. I've, for as long as I can remember, been insisting that people where I live in Vermont who are focused on maintaining their homesteads need to be much more active in the oppositional side of the movement and be willing to be on the streets, shutting down the institutions that are responsible for the problems. And that it's often really nurturing for people from the city who are on the front lines of these struggles every day to have the opportunity to spend some time working on the land and visiting with people who are trying to implement these ideas in our daily lives. I think of spacing on the name, that farm outside of Albany that brings kids from communities of color in New York City to come and spend a week or two on the farm every summer. And the work that they've done to raise awareness of our connections to the land and to ground it in an understanding that we need a fundamentally different kind of food system.
Yeah, soul-fired farm.
Soul-fired farm, yes. Thank you.
Kim had her hand raised, but I...
Okay, whoever wants to go first.
Okay, yeah, so I just want to say, so I have information here about Connecticut NOFA, the Northeast Organic Farming Association, and, you know, the kinds of things that we're doing here in Connecticut. And as Melinda mentioned, the Environmental Rights Amendment, so putting our right, our fundamental human right to clean and healthy air, water, soil, ecosystems, environment, and climate into the state constitution. So I always feel when I listen to kind of high-level talks that people need specific things to go out and do. And so the Environmental Rights Amendment is certainly signing on to that and working towards that in the next legislative session is one, and then getting more access to organic food in this state is another.
Yes, thanks so much for that. For the folks watching, the Connecticut chapter of NOFA, Northeast Organic Farming Association, is represented, and also, as was mentioned earlier, folks working on the Connecticut Environmental Rights Amendment. And of course, there are a number of countries in South America. Bolivia is one. I'm not remembering the other one. That have added rights of nature amendments to their national constitutions, and if you can do that here in Connecticut, that would be an incredibly inspiring example for all of us, I think.
Harder to get in rights of nature than rights of people to
Yes.
Speaking of the other thing that Melinda mentioned in her remarks, which is about our campaign to stop the frac gas expansion and the methane expansion. So in terms of being optimistic about, and I loved everything you said, Brian, and it really resonates with what our work is, you know. In order to make, this is such an optimistic time because we have all the technology.
Yes.
Greta Thunberg's new book. The technology is all available, and even climate mitigation technology is available in standing forests, and so on and so forth. And as you've made the point, it's really political and social why we're being blocked from getting there. But there's so much optimism in the fact that methane is a short-lived pollutant. In other words, it only persists in the atmosphere for about 15 years or less. And so by stopping the methane expansions and then scaling back the massive amount of methane we're burning for energy and heating, we have the potential to make real change and actually not hit 1.5 degrees C. We're pretty much there, almost, but this will be the quickest way to make a change. We, of course, have to do everything to stop carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide, because the nature of the molecule is going to keep going up for decades. But the optimistic thing that we can do right now, and that's what our campaign is about, and so pick up some literature if you want. And that's what we're doing, so thank you, because I really feel like that spoke to, my heart.
Thank you so much. So here in Connecticut, you have an opportunity to stop a new proposed fossil fuel project, 2 new proposed fossil fuel projects. So please pick up the information from the table and get involved in that essential work, because we can't really hold back the worst excesses of the climate crisis until we stop the expansion of fossil fuel use and consumption. Let's take the mic around. I think it's better for people to be heard for themselves.
I wish I'd given both of you the chance.
We
heard you that.
Yeah, I think everyone can hear.
Okay, so I'm living in the suburban life, and one of the things that's what plays with the suburban life, we have these leaf blowers, and they're just hugely polluting and hugely useless, and I can go on and on about that. There are options. One is to I don't know, slogan "Death to Lawns." You can put flowers on the lawn. You can put all sorts of things on the lawn. We've grown a nice garden, a food-bearing garden on the lawn, so we have some serious tomato growing going on. And the other thing is that if we get rid of the leaf blowers, we have all these immigrant workers coming in, and this is a huge part of their income. This idea of giving them the option of doing something constructive, like making farms or keeping the flowers going and stuff like that, seems like a good option. And so, I don't know, that's just something I wanted to put out there, minor thing.
Yes, and of course, if we're going to green the cities and green the suburbs, it means we've got to be growing food everywhere, not relying so much on what gets shipped thousands of miles to fill the supermarkets.
Hey, how's it going? Hello. Yeah, thank you for the talk. Yeah, it was really informative and inspiring. And I think on the topic of apocalypse versus utopia, my first gut reaction even before the talk was kind of I don't know, I don't want to, pick the, sort of dualistic thing, kind of go middle way. But even when you were talking about the debate, with Kamala, it's her version of maybe middle way with fracking is still kind of to the right. And kind of maybe with those quotes you're saying, it's almost the right kind of keeps trying to pull us righter and righter, so then the middle is really just right, if that makes sense. So I guess what I'm trying to say is now that things that seem like they should be, or maybe in the past were more common sense in the middle, are being associated with more like left, or this idea of radical left, which is like, I don't know, that's a whole other conversation. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, as someone who's sort of like newer to like sort of the struggle for all these things, how do you, and like I guess to everybody who's like kind of been in this game for a long time, keep like the optimism, or maybe like your compass pointing in the right direction?
Well, it's not always easy to do, and the more climate science I read, the harder it is to do that sometimes. But I think what keeps me focused is seeing what people in various movements around the world are able to accomplish in holding back the excesses of the system and creating examples on the ground of better ways of living. And there are so many countless examples of that we can draw upon, that's what keeps me from following what sometimes the logic of the science is taking me toward feeling hopeless. And I certainly have my episodes of feeling hopeless. And what brings me back is looking at what people are really able to accomplish on the ground.
So we at Promoting Enduring Peace have been actually trying to work with this question of lawns and lawn equipment. It's not a minor thing. In Connecticut, this little tiny state that we live in, we use 40 million gallons of gasoline every year to cut lawns and to trim trees and things like that. There's alternatives. One is to not worry about lawns. Lawns is something that came in the 17th century. You know, it was the British decided, well, the sheep shouldn't eat the stuff, eat the grass, and you know, it could make it look like a billiard table. And for hundreds of years now, that's been our ideal. But as was mentioned, we could abandon that and go to a different model. But the smaller thing is to go to electric. There's all kinds of electric devices. And I interviewed this fellow in Greenwich who has a company. Now Greenwich, if you don't know, is for the rich people. And so they want it quiet. And that's one of the things that you know, these leaf blowers blow at 95 decibels. Which is sort of like a motorcycle being over there where the piano is. And so there's a company that, you know what a Roomba is, right? For, you know, cleaning the carpet. This is a device that almost silently cuts the grass. They haven't done anything radical with their grass, but they have these electric, silently devices that cut the grass. Even in the rain it works. When it runs out of electricity, it says, oh, I'm running down on electricity, gotta go home. It goes into this little port and plugs itself in for a while and goes back to work. It was pretty extraordinary. And the guy powers up all this stuff in his truck from the sun. You know, he has solar things there. So we have one or two. I must say, we tried to campaign on this. We thought low-hanging fruit was state-owned land. State of Connecticut owns, you know, a lot of land, parks, forests, the land in the highways between the roads. And the governor could just, with a flick of the pen, I guess, say you can't use gasoline-powered equipment on that anymore. We had a petition, we tried, we didn't get anywhere, but it's not a small matter.
Yeah, absolutely right. There are cleaner hand-powered or electric-powered ways to do almost everything, and it's even better if you can dig up your lawn and use it to grow food.
I have 13 monarch caterpillars, no mowing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the sort of hopeful message. I know in my lifetime, you know, this issue and other issues have sort of made me think very short-term and maybe a little nihilistic. That's had an effect on my entire adult life. And sort of waking up in the morning and trying to be optimistic is not easy, so I appreciate it. So I guess my question is, you brought up mining a little bit, right? And we now know, or it seems like the case is going to be that mining is going to increase pretty drastically in the next few years, maybe longer. That's primarily because of the increased need, quote unquote, for computing power, both for surveillance systems and for so-called artificial intelligence, LLMs, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of fervor around this. It seems like there may even be some increased international tensions around this for warfare and so on. And this is more traditional metals, so-called not rare earth metals necessarily, but copper. There was just a big copper mine found, I believe, in Nigeria, and that's U.S. controlled, quote unquote. So people are very happy here and talking about it in, technology reviews and so on about how it's going to be a bulwark against Chinese influence and that old sort of saber rattle. So I guess my question is, those kinds of issues are really hard for me to communicate beyond just saying, hey, mining is happening and it's bad and it's happening in a faraway place. And it's also hard for me to say to someone, stop using AI, because the visibility of that technology is not even easy. It's not even easy to quantify, to know when you're using it or not using it. Not to cast shade on Stan's example with the Roomba thing, but that is an artificial intelligence device, right? Our EVs are using it, right? If we're driving an electric vehicle, it's using it. It's one of the reasons I opt out of using those technologies, but pretty soon I'm not going to be able to opt out of using those technologies. So what do you think about that in general? How worried should we be about mining specifically, and how might we raise the visibility of that kind of complex issue?
Thank you for that. Really important questions. I don't think people have an appreciation of how much increased energy consumption has come to be viewed as necessary in order to power the internet, video streaming, especially on the internet. We think of it as a quiet, unobtrusive technology, but it requires massive data centers, and there are fields in the middle of the country being plowed over and dug up and filled with cement, huge cement buildings, cement and steel buildings to support these data centers, which are very highly energy consumptive. And now comes AI, which really throws a wrench in the works. We've been saying for a long time, we've been pointing out that electric infrastructure is fundamentally more efficient than combustion-based infrastructure, whether it's for heating homes, through heat pumps, or electric vehicles, or better, electrically powered public transportation infrastructure. And we've understood that there's going to be an increase in the production and consumption of electricity in order to drive all that, and figuring out how it can be done with primarily power from the wind and the sun. And now we know that it's cheaper to get electricity, as we saw in the chart, from the sun and the wind than from fossil fuels. And we're even getting very quickly to the point where not only is new solar and wind cheaper than new fossil fuel infrastructure, but it's even cheaper to build new solar and wind installations in many locations than to maintain existing fossil fuel infrastructure. And we're getting to the point where that's even true with battery backups, which are increasingly affordable. But then we have the tech industry putting all of its resources into developing and expanding artificial intelligence. I was just in New York City, and we were on Canal Street, and every other block is a huge billboard for the new iPhone, which is all about increasing artificial intelligence capabilities in your phone. Who needs it? I know I don't. But that's apparently where the money is. And we read that NVIDIA, the company that makes the chips, their initial product was high-powered video chips. And those are the chips that are used to run AI. And this is the company that they say is completely driving current expansion of the stock market. And the tech industry has all their eggs in that basket now, and it is massively consumptive of more and more and more electricity. And it's the electricity that we need to charge cars and run heat pumps in our homes now being siphoned off to expand artificial intelligence.
And Bitcoin.
And Bitcoin, yeah, cryptocurrency is massively energy consuming, we know. And you mentioned the military implications. AI research has always been primarily military driven. When I was a student at MIT back in the 1970s, I had a lot of friends who were working in early iterations of artificial intelligence research, and it was all funded by the Navy and Air Force, and these were progressive and even radical kids who really believed that they were putting something over on the military, getting funding to do things that they thought were fun that couldn't possibly have military applications. And now we have cruise missiles, and we have self-flying drones, and we have all this technology that's drawing on that research that those people who thought they were fooling the military into funding their fun projects were doing. So we've got to expose the myths of AI and help people see that first, we mostly don't need it, and secondly, that a lot of the uses will end up being for purposes that we really don't support. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to support.
Hello, can you hear me? I just want to support that because I feel like that the left now, in addition to everything else we do, we now have to get people aware of what, AI and what Bitcoin and what was the third example we were using, are doing to us. And it's not just, get an electric car. It's also all these other things that we don't see them going on. Yeah, I sort of know about it, but, it's like I have other things to think about. But someone's got to do it. And, if we can get the focus on that as well as on funding and banks and, oil, it's just like we have to really get our act together. Sorry.
No, I completely agree, and thank you for that.
Can I just make it's not a question. Speaking of restorative green spaces, I have a petition here to turn some privately owned property in southern Hamden into a state park. It's owned by it's 102 acres, which is a lot. It's owned by the Olin Corporation, and it's somewhat polluted. There's certain pockets of pollution, but when they clean it up, we want to get it made into a park. And you can sign the petition no matter where you live, because theoretically, a public park, anybody can visit. So I'm going to start over here, and I know some people have already signed it, but if you haven't, if you would like to, and there's flyers in the back that give you more information. So I'm going to pass this around. Thank you.
Let's have one more comment, and then Stan is reminding me that we were actually originally supposed to be out of here by 5 o'clock.
Well, thank you very much. I think everyone here is from Connecticut, and there's a really wonderful organization called People's Action for Clean Energy. They put out a bi-weekly newsletter, and it keeps you updated on what's going on around the state on energy issues, as well as different bills in the state legislature. So it's a very wonderful resource for people. Their website is pacecleanenergy.org. Another comment, I've had solar panels for 10 years. This shows the stupidity in capitalism. My panels have shorted out, and when the technicians came, they said that squirrels must have gone in underneath the panels and chewed the wires. And they see that often because the insulation of the wires on solar panels are manufactured with peanut oil. So I knew that would give you all a laugh. Maybe it's a planned obsolescence also. And the third thing, it's not only fossil fuels that need to be gotten rid of, but nuclear power. And in Connecticut, there's millstone. In different times, different decades, there's been a big upsurge among people, and we haven't had that in quite a while. People need to be aware nuclear power is not renewable. The mining and transportation, everything with it, the spent fuel rods, they all have to go. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for that. Thanks again to everybody for coming out this afternoon. There's a lot of important literature on the back tables. There are books for sale on the table where you first came in, and I'm happy to continue chatting with folks as we clean up the space and work our way back out of the building. Thanks again.